Okie dokie. Today we're going to be talking about some art for the very first video. I went to UW. I just graduated here in 2020, and I only went there for 2 years. It was a transfer, just from a local community college, but I figured it'd be interesting to go over some art that I did. And when I say some, I mean pretty much everything. We'll try and cover all the bulk of it. And even in my non-major classes, just kind of the small things that we worked on, because I've seen like a lot of videos from UW, but they're mostly from like tech and CS things, and I find it kind of funny that the art people don't make a ton of videos about it. I guess in a certain way it makes sense. We're making art about things that are more interesting to us than school, and if you like school, you're probably a nerd and you're into comp sci stuff, so you do you. But let's get into it and kind of go over what I have done. So just kind of starting at the top, we have this like fish sock one that I made. We were supposed to make things out of materials that we either had already or could find, so it played into recycling, and so I got these t-shirts together to make a bit of a windsock inspired by like Japanese kind of koi fish windsock things that you've seen before, but I took kind of like a darker play on it, and I wanted to go and make like a dead fish. I wasn't super into what I was doing on this project, but I did want to try out the spray painting room that they have in the art building, so that's how I painted that. And I made it out of old Pizza Hut t-shirts from when I worked at Pizza Hut. Stay tuned for future videos about work things. And so that's what that one was. Pretty much every time I have done a crit, I don't really have a further vision for my work, but I just kind of make up whatever I'm doing for my crit. I know some people took their work more like seriously, and I think I did that in my later years, but this is in my first quarter at UW as a junior, so I'm just big into freestyling things and doing it off the top of my dome. So people kind of question like, okay, like what's the further purpose? And I was like, well, it's to raise awareness about overfishing, and I just made that up while I was being asked about it. This is actually a photo my teacher took during the crit. And you can see one of the like kind of little things in the background there of someone else's work. But I didn't really enjoy making this one very much. It's kind of frustrating, but it was a class about sculpture things, and we'll see some other stuff in that class. But we're just kind of bobbing around for just whatever the random order I have these things in. But this was an interesting one for sure. This one we have... It's called mail art. We were supposed to make art that could be mailed or sent together as like a collage. And so I'm a very cheap person, and I like making things as like with whatever I have, and that's why like video and photo are so cool to me, because you can just make stuff out of like the materials you have, and they're basically infinitely renewable. And so I was just kind of walking around the campus, and I found this cart of books that they were just going to be recycled, and they were up for free. So I went there and I used some of those as my material, and I made a collage. It was always kind of a joke in photo media between my friends and I, that collages are like the easy way out for making art, and so I just kind of threw this one together. It was supposed to be all just done within the class time period, so nothing crazy on this one, but you can really do a variety of artwork. I was a photo media major, so that is very vague, and I'm going to go over photo media in a different video and hopefully have some friends in on that one to talk about it, because if you're researching it, it could be exactly what you're looking for, but that's really if you're looking for a mystery. But this one was fun to make, and I hardly work with paper, so that was fun to get creative with it. This next one is in my photo media major. I do like working with things hands-on. I do a lot of digital work, as you'll end up seeing, but I wanted to utilize a lot of the tools that UW has, and so in the mill there's these embroidery machines, and I just thought embroideries look really cool, and having a high thread count on stuff is sick, so I wanted to make a piece of art that I could also give as like a gift to my family, and so I made these t-shirts that have my family's faces embroidered on them. It was quite difficult, and I'm a very like roll with the punches kind of an artist, and as long as the big picture gets there, then it works. And so my family's faces ended up being very distorted no matter my different attempts on the embroider machine, and it was quite a frustrating process for me. I typically am like pretty easygoing, but I was definitely busting some blood vessels while I'm working on this one, so it was very difficult for me. And what I ended up doing is just like allowing the faces to be glitchy and messed up, because that's all I could seem to produce. Maybe if I just made the prints smaller, that would work, but I didn't want to compromise the viewability of them. I guess I did that by having them kind of wonky, but the basic process was I took photos of my family, and then in Illustrator I brought those photos in and made kind of like a simple cartoon overlay on them, and then I imported that into the embroidery software, and then from that it kind of generates a pattern of how it's going to stitch everything together. So it took a while, and it wasn't super optimal because you can't like check out times necessarily, so some people may be on it and you'd have to be, you know, waiting several hours for them to crank stuff out, because the embroidery machine is fast, but there's still a lot to do in embroidery, so it can take a while. So I ended up making a product, and then I wanted to make a play on, you may have seen those like photoshopped animals before, and I wanted to like Photoshop my family's faces in the style that the embroidery just ended up being. So this was like one of my larger projects in my major, and I spent like a quarter working on it. I maybe could have got it done faster, but I was kind of at the will of the trial and error of having to go to the mill and cranking that out. So it was kind of a pain. Maybe I'll insert some video clips around of me filming some of the embroidery process, but it was I liked how it turned out, but and I wish I did more of the embroidery, but it was a challenge for me, and that's a good thing. This next one, this is kind of a confusing assignment where what we were supposed to do is make an ideal work. I think, yeah. And you're supposed to like imagine a sculpture or an item somewhere, and it's supposed to be site specific. And I was trying to think of something pretty different that I could do for this project, and I thought like something like a war memorial would be interesting. And I mean, I haven't really had any direct contact with war, obviously, and nor does my family have any like super close ties. I'm not a military family or anything, so I thought I'd kind of go out of my comfort zone by making this kind of medical tent in a forest mock-up sort of a thing. And so this was like a side project that my teacher roped onto us later on, and I just kind of spent some time in Photoshop working on it. You'll probably get a lot of just random assignments. Sometimes you get a whole quarter, like the t-shirt one, to work on things, and sometimes you're just given something weird to work on. So I'd say expect anything if you're in the photo media major, at least. The arts is kind of everywhere, but I think if you're willing to be flexible and have fun with whatever they want you to make, then you can go and do that. I mean, it's all very open season, so you have a lot of freedom. This one is for a class where I tried to just kind of do a whole bunch of random stuff. I forget what the class is called, but the concept of this piece is that it's a 1 minute performance of something, and kind of the inspiration was there's this guy that he made snowballs, and he was selling the snowballs, and so there's like a certain degree of the ephemeral, and there's like a certain amount of satire in that as well. And so in this one, I wanted to go full kind of, what do you call it, like in that scene in iCarly where Sam just picks up the orange and tells a story about it. I wanted to do something similar where I could put on a performance of 1 minute, and when I think of 1 minute performances at school, I think of PE and like fitness tests. And so once my time started for the presentation, I just dropped down and cranked out as many push-ups as I could in a minute. And I asked my teacher to take a photo of me for some evidence of it. She always suggests that you take evidence of your art, and I think that's a good lesson to learn. Always record what you do, even if it is ephemeral like this piece. Everyone in the class are the only people who saw this live, but you guys get to only see it in a photo form now. So that one was a fun one to do. I just kind of like trying to hit that W key sometimes and make something that you wouldn't really see or might be kind of embarrassing, but I think it's worth it. It makes an interesting story at least. This next piece was another one I did for Photomedia, so one in my major, and I did it spring of my junior year, and this one was fairly fun to make. It didn't take too long other than kind of getting the idea together and kind of willing myself to go and do it. But the entire concept was that I wanted strangers to take my photo in places around Seattle, even if they weren't the most exciting, in front of a Grey's Anatomy t-shirt or whatever. So I wanted to interact with strangers, but have me being the one documented. And then you can see that book that I'm holding and that's on the pedestal. That is what I wanted to have people do their signature in. And so after they have the photo taken of me, then I can put that photo above their signature. So that's kind of my weird project. I think it took 2 hours around Seattle, and I got 30 pictures or so, and really only one person denied taking my photo. A few denied giving the signature because they probably thought I was trying to sell them or something. But it was fun otherwise. And I kind of became known for the BLR raincoat after that. It's kind of my signature thing. But it was fun, and I would suggest if you could do a project involving strangers, I think that's almost always worth it. It really adds another variable or multiple variables to your work, and it makes it, it can elevate it a lot more. So I would definitely suggest to anyone who's struggling, think of a way to incorporate just random people into stuff, because it's really fun, and you'll learn something new about yourself as well. This one is a sculpture. It was kind of the final part of that class with the fish one, and basically we were paired up and we were asked to like measure each other's dimensions of the head and then make a sculpture of that person's face. And so this is what I ended up doing with my person, and we didn't have to paint it lifelike or anything. We just had to make something out of the rest of it. And I was going for kind of like my partner. She kind of talked about like transitions in her life and like growing and changing. And I was like, okay, cool. I like the spray paint room, as you saw with the fish thing. And so I wanted to like paint like a transition from one side to another, not necessarily like a good against evil or black against white, but just there's change occurring, and what direction you want to interpret that as is whatever. But that's where I ended up going for that one. I got a little bit of flack on this one from my teacher because they thought it was about race, and I guess looking back I can understand it more, but I just liked how it looked, so I think that was, in my earlier stage, that was more of like a form over function or concept. I just was like, oh, that looks cool, the black and white, and is very contrasty. But it would be a good idea to be aware of different contexts surrounding what this symbolism can mean. I still like how it looks, of course. I think it turned out cool, but that could be something to be cognizant about if you care about that kind of thing. Of course, it's art, do whatever you want. So if you think it looks cool, do it. But someone might think it's about something else when it's really not. Anyways, here's another one in that same sculpture class. The whole idea for this one was to make interlocking parts all of the same shape in the wood shop, and then create something at the end that was a sculpture. I think I called this one like Evolution 20 Forever, which is kind of a cop-out name, where it's just like, oh, they're interlocking pieces and they can evolve forever. And I think I made that up also the same day as the presentation, but I like how it turned out in these hexagon, half hexagon, trapezoid, these four-sided shapes, trapezoids, turned out pretty cool, I think, and they're fairly fun to play with. I did not get them down to all exactly the same size, but they're more or less good enough. I think there's 30 or 40 of them there, but it wasn't too much work, and the wood shop's a pretty cool place, and the guy who works there, who kind of calls all the shots, is pretty nice, and he's always willing to help you out. So if it's the same guy, don't be afraid to go talk to him. But this one was a fun one to make and to play around with, and I didn't have this shape in mind at the end, or I wasn't like, oh, I wanted to make a weird fish thing by the end of this, but I just wanted to make something that I thought was interesting, and we were able to set it up down into the CMA, or there's a space kind of down by the driving range on the campus, and down there's like a gallery space, so we were able to set up down there. And of course I just carried everything in a stack, and then I was just testing out ideas when we were setting this up. So this isn't really the final form of the project. It's Evolution 20 Forever. Of course, it's always changing, but the pieces of wood themselves are the project for this one. This was one of the first projects I did in my major. My initial teacher was really into what's his name? Duchamp, Marcel Duchamp. He was super into him, or at least that's what that entire quarter of the class was about. And Duchamp is quite the interesting character, and I think we were all given a piece of Duchamp artwork to base a piece of work on to show the class. And so I forget the name of that work. I can put it here, but it's the one where he draws a mustache on the Mona Lisa, and then he writes letters at the bottom of it. And so I wanted to do a kind of interactive piece with this one, and this one was with my friend Trey in the class, and we ended up printing out different pictures of other famous works, and then kind of doing a musical chairs of drawings where, like, every few seconds we would switch with someone else in the class and we would all draw something else on it. And then we made our own little parody one. You can see kind of towards the bottom of this picture of an iCup one, and that's hilarious, man. So there's a lot of different ways we could have gone with that, but we figured we might as well keep it lighthearted, fun, and I think that was the whole point of the Duchamp one, of like make something super simple and parody it and create art in a new way by making other people create art. So that's what we did in this one, and that was a pretty fun project, nice and simple. This one was about cameraless photography, done during my senior year, I think. kind of a lazy idea. I think that's been done a fair few times before, but I didn't really have a ton of other ideas, and I thought the line "money moves, making money moves." I think Cardi B says that one. I always thought that line was funny, and so this one was called "Money Moves" because the money moves across the scanner as you're dragging it out. And I mean, same kind of thing I did with the fish one, where I just kind of was like, okay, what's some sort of further spin I can put on this? And so it was really just about, oh, money moves in corrupt ways when it's not tracked properly. And this is about visual corruption as much as it is about cash being a corrupt tool. So I thought that was a good enough concept. And scanners will also not always scan money on them, and there's like built-in software to like prevent that, or like if you open it up in Photoshop, sometimes if it reads enough of the dollar at like a high enough resolution, it won't let you edit it. So that's another interesting thing. If you can kind of put some random cohesive thoughts into it, I think it's good enough for base project at least, and shows that you tried something. And this other one is the same part of that same project. This one was one done as part of a glassworking class I was in. This was during the last bit of the pandemic, so we couldn't do any glass blowing or glass melting or twisting or whatever you do, because we were all at home. But for whatever reason, my teacher picked me out as a chosen one, and she sent me like a whole bunch of these, just thin glass tubes, and then the top of a torch to go on like a propane tank, and then I had to go get the gas tank. It's like MAP gas or something like that. And so you could do it at home if you wanted to spend the money on a top of the torch, and some glass rods. But what she did was, for everyone else, she like, where we were supposed to take a whole bunch of photos and then find patterns within them, and then within those patterns, you're supposed to draw sketches of how that could translate to a piece of glass art. She was just gonna make it on the class Zoom call for everyone, and she wanted me to make mine because I'm cool like that. So this is what I ended up doing, and this is an original picture that was going to go with this, or that it was inspired by. So I'd say for what it was, I was successful in doing it. It was difficult in the sense that like you just kind of had your gas thing sitting here and the torch was going out, and I didn't really have tongs, so I just kind of had to put it in the fire and like let the gravity kind of troop stuff down. Here's a video of what that looks like, but it is a weird way to think, using gravity to pull down your pieces of glass. So I'm glad I got to try melting glass at least a little bit. I've always hated glass art, but I think working with it was interesting at least. So this work was assigned to me in like the 200 level photo media class that I went back and took, just to kind of see what everyone else went through in the prior year. So I did this during my junior year, but I should have done it sophomore year if I went to UW during that time. And so the goal of this work, and it was just done during the class period, was to make a 14 megabyte file and then turn that in. And so I immediately thought of a collage, and of course you could just export a file that large and then you can be done, but I wanted to make it a little bit interesting at least. And so I went around and I asked people on campus to take my photo in front of different little UW landmarks, and I had fun doing this, and you can probably see how this was a predecessor to me doing the going around in Seattle and asking strangers to take my photo. So it was pretty entertaining, and I got it all done in one class period and just kind of put the weird little borders on them, and there you go. Everyone was pretty nice, and you can see a few of them were blurry. I was using the same DSLR that you're watching this on right now to have these people ask these people to take my photos. So everyone does not know how to focus a photo, and the autofocus is not great on this camera. So, you know, you got to make some sacrifice where you can, but this was a fun one to put together. This one I did for Photo Media also. It was with my friend Jolyn, and the assignment was called Culture Jamming, and it was done with partnership of the University of Michigan, and it was a really weird project. We weren't really specifying like what culture jamming meant, but it almost felt like they had an agenda of what they wanted us to do. So I don't really know where we were supposed to go with it. So we kind of came up with this idea of like, can you buy self-worth in a store, just like you could buy meat on a shelf? I kind of forget what our point was, but it was another kind of one that we spent way more time thinking about it than actually creating it. I think we maybe made this in like a week, and we had at least 5 or 6 weeks to do it, but we spent so long trying to think of like what the project was supposed to be, that we had a hard time going further. But I did the Photoshop in this one, and I was the hand model, and then Jolyn is the one in the self-worth package, and then she did the illustration there. So we tried to combine our both photoshopping and illustration and photography skills all into one thing. But it was a confusing assignment, but I liked how the final product turned out. It was a lot different than anything I've done before, and we hardly do collaborations in class, so that was fun to get to work with a friend. So during my junior year in the winter, we had kind of 3 distinct exhibitions around the campus, and so on my university drop-down tab, you can see all 3 of those. And so my first one was called Rumination, and it's like a series of 3 photos, or 2 photos with a mirror in the middle one, and it's vaguely about like self-reflection. I don't really remember what rumination means now. I think it's something about self-reflection or thought. But I knew that the work was going to be in a hallway, and I know that the only reason I stop in a hallway is if I see a reflection or something, or like, oh, I can check myself out in the mirror and see how I look. So that was like my clickbait to try and get people to look at it. I don't know if it worked because I didn't scope out this space, but it was in the UW Tower, and I like how the photos turned out, but this was, you know, during the same time where I was kind of more form over concept, and I was just doing things more stylistically than anything else. And so you can see how it was actually installed. And yeah, I was just kind of doing things that I thought would look cool, and I definitely like how the photos turned out, but there's not a whole lot of depth to it, which I think is fine for these. But yeah, this one was just kind of stylistically. The next one was in the Odegaard Library, and this one I wanted to have an interactive element to it, and I always like doing something different in my works, at least in terms of like trying to up the ante of it. And so I wanted to make it interactive or like animated somehow, and I did that by doing like a flip card animation but with photos. And so I think it worked to a certain extent. I don't know if people really interacted with it too much. There weren't many fingerprints on it when I came and picked it up, but I do like how the animation turned out. I think the flip note part could have been smoother, but what are you gonna do? I also was trying to utilize the printing station a lot more. You can buy just like a roll of paper to put into the printers in the photometer room, and that's really nice for being able to print stuff. So definitely do that if you can, because they'll pay for the ink, and then you won't have to pay like $55 for like a 17-inch wide roll, and then you're set for however long you are there. I still have my roll there. I need to pick that up, even though I'm probably never going to use it again, but or maybe I could sell it to someone else. But I tried to print like as much as I could. Unfortunately, the pandemic part cut that short, because I would have tried to use up the rest of my roll and get that money back, but alas. But this one was cool. I tried to utilize that mirror face thing again, and I also, this was the first like QR code I used in a project. I think maybe I used a QR code again, but the point of it was like you could scan it and then you can watch this animation in higher quality than you could see on the flipbook. So that's what that is. And then the next one, and these are all done in the same spring quarter still. And the last space it was going to be in was a hospital, and I wanted to kind of take it in a different direction, make some a little bit more peaceful, calm, and tranquil. And on all of these, we got to tour the spaces at least to see what the work was going to go up in. So that was nice for something site specific to see where your stuff's going to go. So I didn't want to make it too spooky or weird like the other ones were. And so I just wanted to go for like a peaceful landscape thing that also rewarded the viewer if they took the time to stop and stare at it. And so this one was kind of to stimulate like cloud watching indoors, and I just kind of photoshopped some of the animals to look like, or some of the clouds to look like animals. And I wanted to do something that allowed people to kind of chill and zen out, but also like guess if, is that actually how the clouds looked, or were they manipulated in this way? And kind of a nice peaceful mind playing tricks on you sort of a thing. So it was really interesting this quarter to go and see how you can match the work to the setting. I think I really only did that in the hospital, but it was something to think about that I've never really done before, because if you're just putting up work for an online space, I guess, you can think about how it will fit into your Instagram feed, but it's a lot different if your work is going to be viewed directly on the wall of a hospital or a library or like an office building. So there were certainly interesting things to think about, and hopefully things all of you will be able to try and do if you're a future or current UW student. Definitely doing site-specific work is a good challenge. So yeah, that was a fun one. So the first video is Friends of Fashion, and I did that fall quarter of my senior year. So the way Photomedia works is that you have the same cohort of people throughout basically the 2 1/4 of years that you take it. So you get pretty close bonds with the people that you do like, and you're still in the same, running the same circles as everyone else. And it's just all one kind of small group class. So you see everyone almost at class like twice a week. So you see everyone twice a week at least. And so you do become friends with everyone, and everyone's pretty chill. Everyone kind of had their own groups and stuff, but I wanted to see how I could push that further by trying to become friends with everyone, because at a certain point it felt like everyone was, even though we were all in the same cohort, it felt like we were all very separate in our own little circles. And so I wanted to see how I could push that, and I invited everyone to go like clothing shopping with me, and I soon figured out that this plan wasn't going to work exactly how I thought it was going to, but I wanted to interview people about how fashion is a good way to make friends, or how a sense of style can attract you to other people. So this was a very experimental project, and I wish I thought about it more ahead of time, but I still learned a lot, and it was very interesting to do. It took up a lot of time. This is probably the project that I spent the most amount of time on, maybe 40 or 50 hours over the course of the quarter, which, you can put it in that much during a regular work week, but in this project, I had to go out and physically meet each of my classmates that responded to me. So, you can't work out all those hours back to back to back to back. That's just not how people's schedules work. So you definitely have to be planning all these different meetups throughout the week. And it was quite a challenge to work with everyone's schedules and then film everything correctly. Then I want to take photos of everyone, and there was a summer in between, but just before the summer is when I did that raincoat project. So I wanted to do a similar thing where there's a video component and then a physical component of seeing everyone in their photos that I took of them. So it was not easy, but it was rewarding. I wouldn't say I grew any further or new friendships out of the project, which is kind of the goal. But I did enjoy the process, and I even asked my teacher as well, and he was willing to. So that's a fun part in the video too, from seeing his interviews. And I went out with him and took his photos. It was weird seeing him out of his element, especially because he was kind of like a substitute teacher. He's kind of a weird guy, but go watch the video and you can learn more about him. But I would say if you have an ambitious idea, definitely go for it. I wouldn't say everyone always did an ambitious idea for photo media in the major. I certainly didn't. As you've seen, I did some kind of lazy stuff sometimes, but I tried to be creative at least, and I haven't really seen someone do something exactly like this before. So I'd say go out there and try and make some friends in the major. You don't have to make a video about it, but I think that was definitely an important lesson I learned through photo media. This next video is like one of the videos I made in my first quarter of my junior year, and we were asked to document these 2 rooms in the bottom floor of the art building, to get antiquated with the rooms, because in the following 2 years, essentially, that's where we'll be putting up our work. And so we were to document it to essentially cheat ourselves on how to make site-specific work for these kind of Dungeness rooms. So this one was a fun one to make. Luckily, my sister went to UW as well, and she helped me film this one. But this one was just kind of a little creative thing and just got to be weird. I thought I got pretty good reception on this video, and that was always fun. I really enjoyed the critiques in the classroom. I just tried to say as much as I could for everyone, but that was a really entertaining video to make. $20 was $20 is probably my weirdest video, and that's saying a lot. And a video that I didn't really like very much. Almost everything that I make I'm very proud of, because that's my goal. I want to make work that I'm proud of. And as I spoke in yesterday's video, I kind of want to break out of that a little bit, where I still want to be happy with the work, but not everything has to be like the gold standard, and everything, I can make things that are more chill and relaxed. So this video was very existential for me. It was made in the quarantine era, and it was about me trying to start a Fiverr page, and it wasn't really successful in any way, and so I kind of scrapped the video. And then it was more about me reflecting on, what is an art degree, and is that worth it? And I don't even think I've watched the whole video since I made it, or I didn't even watch the whole video after I rendered it. I was just like, okay, I hate this, and this is just what I'm going to turn in. And it was weird, and I guess I'm proud of it in terms of I'm glad I went through making a project that I hated, because I think that's how you grow. Kind of a bummer that was my last project for photo media that I had to make, but live and let die, man. I think I learned a good bit from that, especially upon like not trying to force something to happen, or to either you can't force something that you haven't planned well for and didn't have a strict goal, or you just have to let things exist as they are. But I was trying to do a weird amalgamation of ideas, and it just wasn't in the right spot. But definitely a weird video. Going back to the very start of my UW career, this one was about loitering, and my teacher wanted us to go somewhere and loiter for 8 hours without a camera or anything, just experience that term out in public, and then make a video about the loitering experience in whatever fashion you want. And so this is kind of, this video and the Room Sign 10D video are what set the tone for a lot of my other future videos and photo media, at least, where it's just kind of like stuff happening and then I monologue over it, kind of like how we're doing right now. And I think I found a comfortable spot, at least in this set of videos, where I can let the idea exist without having the workflow like block what I want to do creatively. And I really just enjoy speaking sometimes, or speaking my own thoughts uninterrupted and just kind of going off. So a lot of how you're hearing me speak right now would probably be very similar to how I'm speaking about my art in class or during a critique or in other videos. So I feel like I can naturally do that now that I'm thinking about it and getting, tripped up over my own words because I'm thinking about. It gets difficult if you do that. But I think when these videos are allowed to stand on their own, at least, they're interesting enough for me. I do want to eventually transfer into a more show, don't tell style of at least filmmaking. But what you gonna do other than experiment? This next video is kind of the opposite, where we were supposed to read a book and then we were supposed to do something about that book. I don't remember what in particular, but it was by Octavia Butler. It's called Bloodchild. And then I interviewed my mom if I was her bloodchild. And it was a fun 20-minute long interview, and we somehow watched the whole thing in class, even though everyone else's projects about the piece were 3 minutes long. But we sat down, cranked out the whole thing. But it was fun. Some of my videos do tend to be on the longer side, just because sometimes I have a lot to say, or I don't like cutting things out a lot of the time because there's just so much information I like to share, and I think that's something I need to get better at. Ironically, in these videos, they're just going to be long because I don't want to edit them down, but I think I'm making this video for me as much as anyone else coming here. I just want to share as much of my experience as I've had for those who want to learn more, and I don't think there's a good resource for learning about art at the University of Washington, and I think this will definitely be interesting for me in the future, going back and looking at my artwork and being able to see how I thought about it with only a few months having gone past since I graduated. So shout out to future you, me, and keep rocking, because every time I go back and see something old, I wish it was longer, there was more footage, and I can just kind of relive that a little bit more. That's why I take photos and videos, and what makes life interesting to me is that documentation. And then I have a few other videos. I'll link the video kind of portfolio YouTube that I have in the description if you just want to see stuff that I've done for school. Of course, you can also check out this YouTube channel for all the other random stuff that I've posted. But in this video, Drive 3, we were supposed to make a video where the sound was all just our voice, and this was done after my teacher all put us into the sound room downstairs in the art building, and it was the sound room's just like one of those sound boxes that you would see like in a regular recording booth, and then he put on Transformers very loud just through the speakers, and we were supposed to like just listen to the sound design. And so this project was inspired by that. The project that he assigned us was inspired by that in-class project that he had us do. And Drive has always been like a silly movie that I like to parody. It's a good movie by itself, but it's just kind of like an inside joke. So I made Drive 3, and I've never done animation before, and I wanted to try doing that as medium. Or I've done animation before, but very hardly for any school stuff. And all the sound effects were made by my voice, so check that one out for sure. And then this last one was not done in Photomedia, but there was like a video production class where you basically got experience like working on a movie set with the MFA actors, which is really cool. And just working with actors that know their lines and can repeat the same scenes over and over is a great experience. So I definitely recommend that class if that's still going. And we were assigned to make a few videos outside of the class as well. So in the class, we would film stuff, and then we would edit the things that we filmed. So that was really interesting. And then we would like go over and do critiques in small groups. And you worked in like groups of 5, and so you got to be pretty hands-on every time we were filming something. And then in this one, we were supposed to, you gotta learn all the different shot types and whatever, and how those express feelings. And so this video was about expressing, or just making a video out of 7 shots that were all different styles. And that's the short of it. It was a fun one to make. Did it with my friend Trey again. He was the model of the actor, and he did a good job and helped me out with that one. So this is not like everything that I have ever worked on, but definitely go check out the playlist linked below in the description, and you can see everything else that I've done. And then check out my website too if you want to see any of my work that I talked about in this video in more detail, or see the pictures larger, or read the descriptions for them. But I hope any future UW students in Photomedia, or really any of the design, found this interesting or gave this some insight. And if you're any of my peers, hi, how's it going? I'm glad that we went through this process together. Shout out to my friends who've helped me as well, and everyone who's given me feedback on the projects. And well, definitely all the Photomedia ones, you will go back and do critiques on these. And it's a very layered process. But I'll go into more depth into that in the UW video that I end up doing. That talks more about the specific experience, not the art itself. But if you have any questions about anything that I talked about today, I am always happy to talk about myself and my art. And I feel like any of these videos or pieces that I talked about, maybe not all of them, but a good chunk of them I could spend doing like a whole kind of behind the scenes thing. So if there's anything that people want to know further on, or my process, I would be happy to dive into that as well. But other than that, if you made it to the end of the video, big respect to you, because it's going to be like 50 minutes long. But I just wanted to make a big, long, rambly juicer for anyone that was interested. And I will see you guys in tomorrow's video where I talk about something else. So peace out, y'all, and keep making art no matter what.